starting Be'ez Hashem siman Vav in haGuela, and we're talking about this subject of Nisim, and the Rebbe is trying to bring rayas that Nisim, that winning a war, even though you're the minority, is not always considered miraculous. So he says like this: Mivur b'divrei Ramban Zal. The Ramban, he brought in the last siman, the Ramban about Pilegish Begiva, and he says, you see from the Ramban Lehedya, he says openly, the Nitzachon HaMilchama afilu rabim muflagim b'ribuyam. He says, winning a war, even if there's a large majority, there's he says, K'moy shahayu shlivtei Yisrael merubim mishevet Binyamin yud pa'amim v'yoser. The other tribes were more than 10 times greater than Shevet Binyamin, and still, he says the Binyamin won the war the first 2 times, right? He says, Einoi inyan shel nes klal. He says that was not a miracle that the Bnei Binyamin won the war. Why? How do you see that? Because Shaharei Adarab Kosav, the Ramban writes, Shabishvil shehinicha Hashem Yisborach lemikrim. The reason why Binyamin won was because Hashem left them to chance, to nature. V'heisir hashkachasoi mehem, and He took away His providence from them. Naflu arabim hachalashim biyad hagiborim ha'me'atim. The powerful, or rather the weak majority fell into the hands of the powerful minority. In Cain, near Bara, we see clearly from this story, the way the Ramban learns the story, that such a victory is natural. V'chein mevur b'divrei hagur Aryeh Parshas Balak. Another proof to this is the Gur Aryeh, the Maharal on Parshas Balak, al pasuk ki ravhu. It says, "Vayagar Moav mipnei ha'am moed ki ravhu," that Moav was afraid of the Jewish people because they were very large, bigger than Moav. And he says, "The riboy am ein araya v'hechlet l'nitzachon." Balak was still willing to fight the war, even though he was a minority, because it's not always true that the majority wins a war. Sometimes the majority can't win the war if they're not good trained fighters. Ayin Sham l'darkoi. V'gam b'neis Chanukah. A third proof to this is Shahaya hanitzachon rabim biyad ma'atim. By Chanukah, the majority were the Greeks and the minority were the Chashmonaim, and they still won the war, right? V'giborim biyad chalashim. And not only that, the Chashmonaim were weaker than the Yevanim, and still they won the war. So he says, the reason for the Yontif Chanukah is not because of the victory. Rak al hanes shel haneros, only the nace of the burning of the candles in the Beis Hamikdash. V'roiv hapoiskim nidchaku b'yishuv kushis Beis Yosef. Beis Yosef asked the famous question, Sheiksha Deloy Haya Nes Rak Zayin Yamim Ki Yadua, that the whole nace, the oil was supposed to burn 1 day, and it burned 8 days. So 1 day is natural, right? So why is there 8 days of Chanukah? There should only be 7 days. V'tirtzu be'oifanim shonim, and many other terutzim were said. V'loy nichluhu b'terutzei shel Pri Chadash. The Pri Chadash is the only one who says the teretz, the Yom Rishon Nikbal Nitzachon Milchama, that the 1 day was established because of the war. The other people who say terutzim don't say that teretz. Obviously, they don't hold that a war is a reason for a yontif. V'ayin b'pri megadim or chaim siman ayin taf reish mishpat zayizav sivkan gimel shemevur b'dvar of the inyan nitzachon milchama einoi dvar nisi klal, that he disagrees with the Pri Chadash, and he says the winning a war is not a nace. He says, when we say al shas nisim, we're not talking about the milchama. The nace who rak, it's talking there about the shas nace b'makam hazeh. You're supposed to make a bracha when you go past the place where a miracle happened for you. So the Taz says, the nes hu rak davar hamuchach v'nikar. There has to be something that's clear, sheyoytei chutz lehekesh ha'olam, that's against the laws of the world. K'moy simal nes, like the word nes also means a banner. So here also, it's something that's clear, like a banner, that the laws of nature were broken. And we see from this regarding Hanukkah that even if there's two things, not only it says not only were the people majority, but they were stronger, and still the weak minority, like the Hashmonaim, won the war. Ein zeh davar nisi. That's still not an ace. The gam zeh yuchal liyos b'taluchais hamilchama. That could happen naturally in a war. That the weak people who are minority could still win the war. Be'ez tachsis, due to some tactic that they used. And it will still happen naturally. Okay. So now the Rebbe has a kasha. If Chanukah wasn't a nes, then why do we say in Al Nisim? Why do we say Mosarte Giborim Biad Chalashim, V'Rabim Biad Matim? It sounds like it's a nes. He says, "Umasha anu oimrim b'Chanukah b'nusach hatfila Al Nisim Mosarte Giborim Biad Chalashim, V'Rabim Biad Matim, Utmeim Biad Tehorim, U'Shayim Biad Tzadikim, V'Zeidim Biad Oiski Sorisecha, Tzarich Bir." He says, now we have a problem. The Bishlam Atrei Kamoi Revusahu. The first two things is a chiddush. It's not a nes, but it's at least a chiddush. The al pi haroiv is damin lehepich. Usually it's the opposite. Usually the bigger side wins. So it makes sense that we should mention it in our tefillas. What's the point of saying that the Yevanim were Tameim and the Chashmonaim were Tehorim and they still won the war? Even though the Chashmonaim were tzadikim and the Yevanim were Rishaim, still the tzadikim won the war. What's the still? What's the chiddush of that? Is it natural that the Rishaim should always win wars? What's the point of saying that tzadikim won the war? That really the answer is that the Muhammad was not a miracle. What's the point of all these words? It's not a nes. Nearly behektim masha amar hatoisvis yantif be'avos perak hey mishnah hey. Toisvis yantiv al divrei mishnah v'lo ira carry the kohen gadol b'yom kippurim. This part the Rebbe brings also in Vayol Moshe in the Hakdama, where he's talking about that the Medina pushes off the Geula. The Geula can't come as long as there's a Medina. So he says that why is the Satan making the Medina? Because the Satan knows that that's going to be the end of him when the Geula comes, and he's trying to stop the Geula from coming. That's what he brings it over there for, but let's see how he brings it here. He says, V'lo ira kari l'kohen gadol b'yom kippurim. It says that the kohen gadol never became Balkari in Kippur. That's one of the miracles that happened in the temple. Yesh mi shehiksha. So Tosfos Yontif brings, some people ask, V'lama yera lo kari. How could it be? Like, what's the big nace that a kari never happened to him? When is it going to happen? When is it supposed to happen? The whole 7 days they were keeping him separate from his wife, and he was all watching the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. The whole night of Yom Kippur itself, they kept him awake. They read to him from Tanakh. It says, right? What's the nace that he didn't have carried? The answer. The Yetzer Tov, Yetzer Ra are fighting with each other. When one of them feels he's about to lose, then he becomes powerful all of a sudden. Because he sees that he's about to get defeated. That's why it was likely the Kohen should become Balkari. Why? Because the Satan is trying very hard. Because the Satan knows Yom Kippur is the day when all the Averis get erased. He doesn't want that to happen, so he doesn't want the Kohen Gadol to do his Avodah. So he's very, very works very hard that he should become Balkari. Kain Kosav b'Medrash Shmuel b'Shem HaChasid Zal Ad Kan L'Shoyin. The Sefer Medrash Shmuel is a Pirush on Pirkei Avos written by Reb Shmuel di Uzida, who is a Talmud of the Arizal. So I think when he says a Chasid Zal, he means the Arizal. And he's saying that this pshat is what the Arizal said. That's why the Kohen Gadol, it was a nace that he didn't become Balkari, because the Satan was trying very hard to make him Balkari. Even though usually if someone just stays up all night, he's usually not going to be a Balkari. But the Kohen Gadol, it's a nace. By the Fisha Satan, Kisharoya b'Yom Kippurim Shekarv Liyos Manutzach. He sees he's about to get defeated. Oz Misgaber b'Chol Koich Chaysav. He tries very hard. El Shemin Hashemayim Messiahim l'Kohen Gadol v'Oizrim Loi. But the nace is that Hashem helps the Kohen Gadol that it shouldn't happen. V'Yolamolei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oizroi Loi HaYachaloi. It says by the Yetzer Hara, I think in Kedushin Daf Lamed, it says that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu wouldn't help you against your Yetzer Hara, you wouldn't be able to defeat him. V'shapir havi nisan. That's why it's a nace. U'kumoy kain b'neis to Chanukah. So now back to our question. Again, the question was, we say in Tefillah, we say in Al Nisim, Tameim b'yad Toharim, U'Rishayim b'yad Tzadikim. So what's the point of saying that? Is it the natural thing that Rishayim should win a war? So he says like this: the Yevanim wanted to uproot the whole Torah. That the Chashmonaim brought back the light of Torah and they built back the Beis Hamikdash. That's why the Samach Mem was fighting for the Yevanim in that war, because he knew that if the Yevanim lose, there's going to be Torah again, right? So he's fighting for the Greeks. And he tried very hard to fight for the Greeks. That derech hateva, you can't fight against the Satan. That was why the Chashmonaim's victory was a miracle. Because the righteous ones defeated the wicked. Samach Mem was trying to make the Greeks win and the Chashmonaim won. Now we understand why we say that, because that even the first part, that the majority was beaten by the minority, is not a nace at all. Winning a war is a natural thing. Even the weaker side could win the war sometimes. But the reason is because since the Chashmonaim were Tehorim, Rishayim b'yad Tzadikim, they were Tzadikim winning against Rishayim. That's why the whole thing was miraculous. So now we're coming back to say that Al Nisim is saying it is miraculous. So then why can't we answer the Beis Yosef's kasha and say that one day of Chanukah is for the war? Because it wasn't an open nace that was visible from the natural perspective, people don't know what's going on in Shemaim. They don't know that the Satan is helping the Yevanim. People don't see why it's a nace. That's why Chazal didn't make the bracha of Al Nisim on the war. The whole Yantiv is about the oil. But they did put it in Al Nisim, that we say in Moedim, the Al Nisim de Haida miyabai. Because you at least need to give thanks for it, but it's not a nace. They know what's going on in Shemaim. They know the Satan's trying. And they know it was a nace that Hashem helped them win. So that's why they made it into a hoidah. But a nace, an open nace, it's not. So that's why we don't make a bracha al nisim. Yeah. So to sum it up, what do we see in the siman? We see that sometimes in derech hateva, you could, if you take out from the picture of the Satan, take out from the picture of the Tzadikim and Rishayim, sometimes with derech hateva, the weaker side could win a war. And so therefore the Tziyonim winning the 6-day war is not really a nace at all. And to say Tzadikim b'yad Rishayim Rishayim b'yad tzadikim, that doesn't apply over there, obviously, because both sides were Rishayim. So you can't say that the Zionists were winning the war because they were tzadikim and it was a nace that tzadikim won. Obviously, it's the opposite. The Zionists are Rishayim, so you can't say that either.
Yeah, because Shapiro also says, mentions